G'day guys, welcome to the Origin breakdown of Footy Rants. I just wanted to get something short and sharp in to keep it separate from our round 13 preview tomorrow. Wow, what a game last night. Probably didn't expect the Blues to get away with a win in the fashion that they did. As a Queensland supporter, I said in my prediction last week, I thought that New South Wales by 8. I was predicting somewhere around that 22-14, still relatively competitive. I definitely didn't see a 24-point thrashing at Suncorp on the cards. So, as a Queensland supporter, obviously disappointed with that result. But, from the team that was picked by Kevvie Walters and the selection panel, I think it's sort of just highlights some of the weaknesses in areas that were noted by everyone. Obviously there's massive omissions outside of the fact that Thurston wasn't there, Matt Scott's out for the year, Inglis is out for the year, but all excuses aside, New South Wales have been missing players over the years as well, and that they're moving forward into a new era without Paul Gallen after his retirement. But yeah, we've seen in that first half, it was very much a fast-paced game. Let's flick over now to some of the highlights. Bear with me. Yeah, so straight off the bat, I thought there was good energy there from Dylan Napa, but we'll sort of slow down and break this try up a little bit. So I'll peel that back. So we can see here there's just a little bit of sloppiness in and around the ruck. You can see at the top of the screen there in the white boots in the centre, and then you've got Papali in the green boots. So we've got Maguire and Papali, and they're sort of just ball watching at the minute. So if we sort of just let this eke forward, Maguire's still sort of labouring over, and you can see the space starting to get created, and even Papali is just turning his shoulder, and then all of a sudden it's too late. There's that tip, and Papali now, he's never going to get across there. He's already got the legs. I think we see Chambers at the top right of screen. He's going to get across before even Papali does, as we let that play out. And we know Jimmy Maloney's a pretty good finisher in and around the footy, especially that like he does for the Sharks so well. Phenomenal try really. It was a great kick from Cooper Cronk. You see he gets that curvature on the footy. So let's just peel that back. That curvature on the kick and loops around, and what Blake Ferguson I think here he fucks up in defence, and it was brought up by one of my mates, Rhino, that I was watching the game with last night. Ferguson actually tries to get on the outside here, so it's almost like he's trying to play for an offensive play. He's trying to steal that footy and get on the outside, and it doesn't really pay dividends for him. Then we lead into the next New South Wales try, which came just before. So if we pause this here, we'll just peel it back just a wee bit. So we can see at the top center of the screen, Cam Smith's caught up in the ruck yet again. So he's too busy fucking around in the ruck. And Nathan Peets has jumped out and given a quick ball to Wade Graham. So we see there in the 15 towards the bottom of your screen. So at the moment there, so we've got Tedesco, Graham, Hayne at the bottom of the screen, and then outside we've got Morris. So you look up at the edge on the left there, so we've got Matt Gillett and Cooper Cronk in view. So at the moment we're man on, so 4-on-4, but by Pete's jumping out, we've already got the 5-on-4 for the Blues, and you can see the shoulders there of Matt Gillett. He's already turned out. So as we start to scooch forward there, he's already shitting himself, thinking there's no way Cooper Cronk's going to make this one-on-one tackle with Wade Graham. And now on this still shot here, you can see that Cooper Cronk's planted his feet, and now he's talking back on the inside, but it's too little too late. Wade Graham, a little bit of footwork just to hold Gillett up, so then his shoulders get turned again, and then we can see, Peets is almost running Smith off the ball, and then as we see, plays all the way through, straight up the guts. Gillett misses the one-on-one, and then just good push up the guts by Pearce. And that's what you want your halves doing. Pearce and Maloney did that very well, much like Chad Townsend does. And this is just, again, an overread. So I was watching this live and I said they're going to score here as soon as I seen Tedesco get into dummy half. So what actually happens there? So we see Milford get caught at marker, and there was actually a big tangle. It's a shame we can't see a little bit earlier in this play, but Morgan gets caught up and forced to the blind side. So once he sees, then once Milford sees Tedesco jump out of dummy half, he really bites hard and over chases. So what Tedesco does here, he runs that nice J-arc. You can see he's probably got out 3 or 4 meters there and got on the outside shoulder. So now that squares, we can see in that still shot there that the edge defenders for Queensland are still sort of flat-footed. You've got Chambers there who's already planted. And then as it moves forward, Morgan's over chase. Look at that overstride there. There's no way he's turning on a dime. And we can see that Milford's already in that turnstile position. Bang. Beaten for footwork. You can see it again there. They're both overrun. Arms tackle. Try time. And still had a lot of work to do. You know, phenomenal try. And this sort of sums up the night for Queensland there. You know, Justin O'Neill, I think he's sort of done his dash. So if we're talking about that edge defense, and we'll just let these highlights play out now because it's pretty much all trivial from here. Yeah, we've seen that edge defense. So we had here Gillett, O'Neill, and Cooper Cronk on that edge. They missed a combined total of 17 tackles. So, you know, something's got to be addressed there. They'll definitely be going away and working on that. Very uncharacteristic of someone like Matt Gillett, who's, you know, played so much footy with Cooper Cronk. Yeah, it was quite surprising to see that there was that many missed tackles, but I think that sort of comes back onto the form of Justin O'Neill. You know, he hasn't played a whole lot of footy, and the fact that he was even in that Australian Anzac Test side a few weeks ago was something that surprised me a little bit. So to sort of, you know, we'll run through some stats here, but then I want to go out and give some pats on the back to New South Wales, because I don't just want this to be a Queensland beat up from a Queensland supporter. You know, Darius Boyd, you see there, didn't really get to do what he does best. Didn't even run for 100 meters. And I've spoken to a few mates in the aftermath, and, you know, a few of them have sort of given Darius Boyd a bit of a kick up the arse, but you know, you can't really expect too much of Boyd. He can only do so much when that forward pack isn't firing. So we see here, I thought Dylan Napa was solid, but again, he's a bit like a firecracker. You're never going to get too many minutes out of him. He only played the first 20 minutes before he was subbed off, and I think that was due to that little foot niggle that he ended up coming back on. So presumably he got an injection at halftime and came back late in the game. Nate Miles, we see here, 8 runs, 63 meters, 23 tackles, so pretty ineffective. And we have a look at Lillyman, pretty similar stats. 9 carries, 78 meters, 18 tackles. And again, another glaring stat, only 30 minutes, 34 minutes. You know, Narps has only just cleared 40. And then, you know, you got Thide Guerra with only 40 and 30. So there's not too many blokes that are pulling big minutes aside from Josh Maguire. And this is sort of what I'm proposing now. Again, I'll want to race through this because, again, I don't want this just to be a Queensland-focused podcast. Some of the changes that I think do need to be made, I think O'Neill has probably done his dash, and whatever happens, but I think Slater needs to find his way into that team. I would play him at fullback and put Darius on the wing. If for whatever reason, you know, you want to continue to argue that point, like I said, I'm happy for Slater to be on the wing. He just needs to be in that starting 17 somewhere, and I would just move Gagai into the centres. I would have picked Holmes originally, but I don't think Oates did anything, you know, nearly bad enough to warrant getting dropped. And the fact that he did score that try, I don't think Valentine Holmes could score that try, you know, just purely based off the height that Oates possesses. I would actually move Josh Maguire to the front row. I'd pull Miles out, and then potentially, depending on whether or not Thurston is fit for game 2, because he's still under a massive amount of doubt for that. I don't think people realise how bad that injury is to that rotator cuff. I think the fact that most people would probably have to require surgery on the injury that he's got now. From what I've been hearing from certain people on the inside. yeah, that tear's pretty substantial. So if he does come back, I imagine there'd be a fair few injections involved in that process. So if Thurston does manage to come back, he obviously slots in. I don't think Milford will find himself on the bench just because Michael Morgan probably just offers a little bit more in diversity, and with injuries, you just don't know what's going to happen in Origin. So I think he just offers up a little bit more there. Not to say that Michael Morgan set the world on fire last night. Obviously, come up with that poor defensive play that led to that Tedesco try, and didn't really offer up too much. Involvements there. You see stat wise, 10 carries, 80 meters, and 16 tackles. So with what's that? I believe that's 8 missed tackles. So 30% ineffectiveness as far as his defensive efforts are concerned. So that's something that will definitely need addressing from Kevvie Walters moving into game 2 for Queensland. So if Thurston plays, I'd probably like to see Papali go back to lock, Maguire into the front row, and I'd probably bring Gavin Cooper back into that second row position, either that or Sam Thaiday and Cooper onto the bench. I don't really mind what happens either which way. I thought Guerra did enough to keep his spot there, and I'd probably punt Lillyman and Nate Miles and look to someone like Wallace and Sims that I spoke about in the lead up. I highly doubt any of what I've just said is going to occur. It's probably a bit too much change, but I think now you've got to make a shit ton of changes and back yourself, or you stick with the majority, like 90% of this side, and just say clean it up. Do you drop O'Neill and then get Slater in the team somewhere, and then potentially drop Jacob Lillyman, bring Wallace in, and still keep Miles in the squad. I think that is probably something that's more likely to happen, only maybe 1 or 2 changes despite what's happened. But just one more glaring stat, 7 missed tackles from Cameron Smith. I thought he was, I don't know, he looked like he was working really hard in the middle, and I guess that sort of comes back to what Cooper Cronk was saying at halftime. It was probably one of the fastest halves of footy that he's played ever in Origin. So, you got to remember these guys aren't getting any younger. So I think Cameron Smith actually started to feel the pinch a little bit there, and knowing that there wasn't a replacement 9 that came on to relieve him, and he played the full 80, I think that really fucking sapped him. I would be very surprised if he plays a full game again for the Storm come the back end of this week, because they play tomorrow. So moving forward, I don't want to harp on too much about changes or anything yet. For Queensland, I just want to give big raps. James Tedesco, what a freak. Some of the defensive plays that he came up with, and we've seen it there in the highlights package. Just the ability to get under Matt Gillett the way he did. I know Travojevic was ran under the legs, and it sort of offset that momentum for Gillett. But yeah, what a phenomenal performance in just his second game of Origin. And other notable mentions, obviously Fafita absolutely dominated that forward pack we see here. 18 hit-ups, 183 metres, 21 tackles with only 1 miss and a try. You can't ask for much more than that, and a try assist. So yeah, absolutely phenomenal. Boyd Cordner on debut as captain. Didn't take a backward step. And an interesting point raised, I want to give a plug to one of my mates, Cuffo, that I was speaking to this morning. One thing that he sort of mentioned that he sort of took note of was the difference in, I guess, what he was trying to get across was the mood of the team, the style of play that they're now bringing under Cordner. Now, you had someone like a Paul Gallen who had, for all intent, a lot of angst around, the frustration of captaining through this Queensland dynasty, and it was a lot of, grub tactics like, fuck these Queenslanders, these two-headed pigs. It was take everything personally and try and, get under the Queenslanders' skin with brutality. Whereas it didn't really appear, I mean, yes, it was physical and there was little bits of niggle, and that's just what happens when you've got arguably 26 of the best players in the NRL going toe-to-toe over 80 minutes. But aside from that, it seemed like a much more measured approach. The calming nature of Cordner to just know his role, back that, And you could even see it in the pre-game. I think the word that Brad Fittler used was there wasn't as much bravado in the lead up. As far as their warm-up was concerned, there wasn't a lot of yahooing going on and chest puffing. It was, we know our strengths, we know where to play, and let's just get that job done. So I thought the captaincy of Cordner, the absolutely explosive carries and offloads from Fafita, and the finishes and defensive efforts from James Tedesco really led the way. Pearce was really, really good in his time. We'll sort of see here if it'll let me play. This was a pretty pivotal moment for both sides here. We see Will Chambers will miss a week for that, I've since heard. And Oates ended up injuring Milford in the same play. So they both, and those players both won't take part in their clash for their clubs this weekend. So it would have been good to see them have another crack at each other this weekend, but unfortunately that's the way the cookie crumbles. So you can see it's that play at the back. Chambers reads it really, really well. I don't know, like, I understand it's contact to the head, and we don't ever want to see anyone get drastically hurt like that, but it's not intentional. He's not trying to hit a shoulder in the head. He's sort of, you're lowering your body position as you're getting that, and then we see on the way through with Oates pushing up as well that it was, just a bit of circumstantial friendly fire. Couple other things that sort of come under scrutiny. This was something that I've seen sort of debated on social media, that Cordner didn't really mean this, but I don't know. Everyone's argument was sort of Miles was holding onto his jersey. If that doesn't happen, it doesn't go on. And, there's obvious concern showed here. And, that sort of tells me that there wasn't much malice in it. But you're trying to get, again, there's no malice in the Will Chambers shot. So for him to get across there, he's pinned the arm there. And now he's just rolling across with it. Like, Cordner knows exactly where Nate Miles' arm is. But I think now the fact that it wasn't penalised, it'll almost just go on principle that it was just an incident, and we all sort of got to move on. There was one more video. Oh yeah, this is again just the other charge. It was actually placed by Morgan.
With the world's fastest mobile hotspot, you can enjoy a new standard of speed exclusive to Telstra. Thrive on a new kind of network.
Can all that. Jesus. Sorry, guys. Hopefully we're all good to publish that anyway. Anyway, that was just the tackle from from Michael Morgan, getting underneath Jacob Lillyman. With Jacob Lillyman, sorry. Getting underneath one of the New South Wales attackers there. So, yeah, that's pretty much my sort of view on the game. Where the obvious power plays was the presence and defensive tenacity, I think is the word I'd love to use for James Tedesco. And it was a different side of Andrew Fafita that we've seen. It wasn't... It was the aggressive nature that we're used to, and the influence that we all know that he possesses and has on the game, much like he did in the grand final last year. But there wasn't that extra effort. It wasn't that I've done something well and now I'm going to slap the marker in the head. It was, just a bit more measured. So, I think this balance that they've sort of found after that first one, it's now the momentum has been set in favour of New South Wales. That's going to be the hardest thing to overcome for Queensland now, especially having to go down to New South Wales to win game 2. So, it's an interesting way up that Queensland's going to have to experience with their selections now. Do they go with, like I was saying earlier, do they go with just minimal changes and address the issues as they see fit? Or are they going to make all the changes that they think these players will bring to where the failures lie in game 1? And then the argument, or I guess more the supporting evidence that they have to bring to the table for game 2 is then why wasn't this team picked for round 1 if this seems the obvious combatant to a lot of the strengths that New South Wales possess? Because on paper, you looked at that New South Wales team and you know it was going to be strong. So that's my biggest concern now for Queensland, is how are they going to overcome this momentum that New South Wales is going to bring now. So to stop a complete and utter whitewash, it's going to be a really interesting challenge for for Kevvie Walters and his boys. It's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be very, very interesting to see, especially now that I think their backs are up against the wall, and everyone's sort of talking about, oh, the dynasty's dead and this, that, and the other. But if Thurston's back, I think we're going to see how much impact he does bring and how much influence he possesses at that Origin level. Not to say all of a sudden that Queensland is going to go and do a doozy on New South Wales. I honestly think if Queensland does manage to square up game 2, it will have to be with Jonathan Thurston's presence. He just brings that creative spark. Cooper Cronk's a bit too much of a traditional half. He can steer your team around the park really, really well. He's going to get you those extra efforts that you require as far as 40-20 kicking ability, field goal kicking ability. He can win you games. We've seen that with the kick that he provided for Corey Oates. But as far as the flair and off the cuff and reading things instantaneously in the play, that's very much a trait that Jonathan Thurston has. The seed planter that Jonathan Thurston is. So, I thought before we sort of go away too early, Milford was very, very good. I barraged him. I didn't really want to see him in the team, but he did stand up. Had a lot of people say, he'll be good. He'll stand up, as inevitably a lot of Queensland players do when they pull that jersey on, and New South Wales players as well. But yeah, it was good to see him take on the line. He had 4 or 5 carries there, wasn't afraid to duck his nose through. His defence wasn't terrible. I think he only missed 2 tackles in the time that he was out there. But it was pleasing to see, because you don't want anyone to go out there and be unsuccessful. That definitely wasn't the claim that I was trying to make. But, I didn't think he was sort of fit for that job at this time. And I don't think he will get another run as long as Thurston is fit. But I'm now filled with a lot more confidence that he will get his turn and that perhaps he is the right selection moving forward once Thurston and Cronk do retire. Who that partner is in the halves, I'm not too sure. I don't think Michael Morgan has really possessed anything with the qualities that he brings on field to suggest that he will be that follow-up. I think potentially we may see Corey Norman get his opportunities in the future. Maybe Cherry Evans does get his opportunities to re-spark, reignite some sort of rep career, but that is all hearsay from here on in. So, yeah, nice, short, sharp sort of recap, breakdown of the Origin. If you've got any questions or comments that you want to tap onto the back of this podcast before Origin chat gets too far away from us and we want to start focusing on round 13, just drop it in that comment section and make sure that you keep liking, commenting, sharing, subscribe on YouTube. We're on iTunes, we're on SoundCloud, so get involved, lap all that sort of shit up, because as long as you keep listening, I'll keep putting out content. So thanks again, guys. So I'll be back tomorrow with everything round 13 NRL. Gotcha.